How to create HDR photographs. HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. Dynamic range is basically the difference between the lightest and the darkest areas of a photo. Your goal is going to be to capture the brightest highlights and the darkest shadows that you can get using multiple photographs. We're then going to use software to stack those photographs on top of each other to create a wide view of tones. This technique is called bracketing. Bracketing is when you take the same photograph more than once using different exposure settings. Our goal will be to capture a bright, a medium, and a dark variation of the same photograph. What we do in photography is we're usually trying to get a correctly exposed image. So a light, medium, and dark image is what we're trying to capture. There are multiple ways to do this. The most effective is to use your exposure compensation setting, that little thing that goes from +5 to -5, or you can also change your shutter speed settings to let different amounts of light in to the sensor on your camera. So for this project, you're going to want to shoot on manual mode or one of the manual modes on your camera. But it's important as you take your photos that you stay stable and your camera does not move. So you'll want to use a tripod. You'll also want to keep the focus point the same. So this is called metering. We'll want to keep the same level of metering for all the photos you take. You want to put your lens on the manual focus, so the autofocus isn't fighting against you while you're taking your pictures. Now let's get started on the processing part. Photoshop does most of the work for you. I have one image open. I'm going to go to the main menu under File, Automate, and down at the bottom there's a thing called Merge to HDR Pro. So this is the tool that is going to do most of the work for us. In this dialog box, it asks us to find the files we want to merge. It says at least select 2 images. I'm going to ask you to select 3 images, a light, medium, and dark photograph of the same scene. You browse for them individually. I'm going to select 4 today. So the more photos you pick and the wider range of exposures, the more intense and dramatic the images you get will be. So in a blink of an eye, what Photoshop just did was open up all 4 of my images, stacked them in a document on top of each other in different layers, and opened me a dialog box. So it says Merge to HDR Pro. What I'm showing you is in the top corner, there are some presets, some options that are already set for particular looks. If you like any of those, you can just try them, go with it, and save it. But as always, I prefer to customize my own settings. Instead of letting my camera do the auto settings, I want to have control of the highlights, the shadows, and the amount of detail that shows up in my picture. So we have lots of choices here as far as edge glow. The slider bar that I usually change the most is the detail. You can slide all these around and look and try different settings, and when you get one you like, you'll just hit finish or save. What I want you to know is there's this thing called ghosting. Up here at the top there's a check mark where you can click remove ghosts or you can leave that unselected. What that does is if your model moved or the landscape moved because of the wind or your camera moved, it omits the image with the movement. Because in HDR, when we're stacking these images on top of each other, if something moved, it creates what's called a ghost. And that interferes with what our image looks like, and we want to take those out of the equation. We have lots of options and things we can change here. Feel free to explore and try them all. And when you get it how you like it, you click OK. What I recommend is that you practice HDR photography on an object or a still life first. Then you try more complex subjects like landscapes or portraits. So why I say landscapes and portraits are more difficult is because they move, or the wind moves things in your landscape. So tripods are really, really important for this particular project. Now that I'm finished processing my HDR image, Photoshop then opens it in a normal window, so I can go ahead and develop it further. Today I'm just doing a tiny bit of cropping, but you can use all the tools, and then you can save the image where you want it and how you want it to be. Now I'm going to open a second project of a landscape from Fort Smith that I'd like to show you. What I want you to see is how all the detail in the clouds show up in every brick and every blade of grass. Some cameras will actually do bracketing for you if you have like a newer camera. You can also coach your model to wear something that has a really crazy pattern or unique texture. This will make the details really pop with HDR. So again, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing your HDR creations. If you need help, let me know. If not, thank you so much for watching.